Good morning, everyone. My name is Chad Toprak. I'm the director of Freeplay, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Freeplay hosts and broadcasts from the stolen lands of the Wurundjeri and Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, where stories have been shared and games have been played since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and to anyone watching who has a connection to the world's oldest living culture. Sovereignty was never ceded, and the violence of the colonial project is still ongoing. So we have a very special talk today with two very special guests from Zeitgeist Studio. They're working on an amazing game called Name of the Will, and the talk is titled Power of Game and Art to Resist Power. I think this talk is particularly important because today also marks the second year anniversary of the Hong Kong protests. It's a topic that's close to my heart as well. And I'm very grateful that the artists today could join us. Joining us today is Mandy and Jerry from Zeitgeist Studio. They're both co-founders. And Mandy is a New York-based Hong Kong digital and performance artist. Her works were exhibited in various places such as Art Omi, New York, Kunstquartier Bethanien in Berlin, Videothek or Videotag in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong Visual Arts Center. And Jerry is a Hong Kong drawing and animation artist based in New York. He exhibited his works in different countries, including Ethan Cohen Gallery in New York, Domatio in Greece, and he also curated a few group exhibitions concerning experimental comics with the support from Hong Kong Arts Development Council. Please make Mandy and Jerry welcome, and I will pass it over to them.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Jerry from Zeitgeist Studio.
Hi everyone, I'm Mandy. So thank you, Chad and Freeplay, for giving us such a meaningful opportunity to share and remembering our 2 years anniversary of the Hong Kong protests. So being an artist, newbies of game development, like the Name of the Will, this game is actually our first game to jump into the game industry and to use game as a media to create our artworks. And being as a Hong Konger, we will be speaking today's topic based on our personal experience and our struggle with political turmoil in our homeland. So as we already mentioned about, like, today is the second, it's the 2 years anniversary of the Hong Kong protest. And actually, 2 years ago from today, is Hong Kong had one of the largest strike along with occupation against extradition bill. And this marks the beginning of half a year-long street protests and conflicts. Millions of Hong Kong people, that was a quarter of the population, resist and shout out their continuing discontent against a descending into totalitarian governance. So giving a little bit more background information, so Hong Kong was a British colony and it got handed over to China's governance in 1997. But like being in that stage, we actually experienced a not like explicitly, but actually we have experienced some like certain degree of like freedom and autonomy. But after like 2019, significantly, we have experienced that was a drastic change of the social environment, and we lost a lot of things, including like our safety, our freedom, and also somehow we were being monitored and controlled by the government to not to say something or say something, and we will explain a little bit more. So since June 12th, the government and the police characterized the protest as riot, given that we only had like minimal weapons, or we only have actually bricks and sometimes even like wooden sticks to against the police who they have like guns and rubber bullets and tear gases, but they claim ourselves like as rioter, and responds with brutal violence, not only physical harassment, suppression, and murder, but also stigmatization of movements. And throughout like the protest, we thought we were able to achieve something, given that it was like the longest and the most participated protest in the history of Hong Kong. But we end up with an implemented law which restricts the freedom of each citizen in all spectrum, including like the freedom of speech, press, and assembly. And just naming a few examples, a vigil commemorating the June 4th Tiananmen Square incident has been run annually and freely for over 30 years. And it was forbidden not because of like the COVID, but it was because of like the political quote unquote incorrectness from the regime's perspective. Just not to mention that like the arrests of dissidents, including pro-democracy politicians, are happening almost every day. So with the oppression from the totalitarian and authoritarian regime, we being ourselves as a Hong Konger, like observing the changes and feel that there is a significant sense of fear and helplessness among the society. And knowing that there is a huge hindrance to defy the authority. So on, some of the people might gradually lose the direction to take action against the power, and some might just turn themselves into political apathy so that they could be numb upon the absurdity of the society. But like we, including us, a lot of people also ask like, what could we do in such an oppressive situation where everyone seems to be only able to survive in the little gray area?
Yeah, so let's divide the power and arts into two main categories: a tool to resist lies and a cultural heritage. So we may have to admit that game and art are not that efficient when it comes to overthrowing a regime or leading a social change. After all, a huge amount of resources and manpower are essential to achieve such a big step. A direct political action might always be more efficient than a cultural product. Nonetheless, they are very, very important and meaningful as the minimal political resistance, defined by a former dissident and first president of Czech Republic, Václav Havel. A minimal resistance is to refuse lies and to retain our humanity, autonomy, and critical thinking. So last year, near the sudden and unsatisfactory pause of the protests, we started our first game project, Name of the Will, to respond to the unsettling agony and turmoil. We're still creating this game and expecting it to be launched next year, and we are very excited about it, while awaiting for another social movement. In this game, we seek to profoundly reflect reality and present a general scenery of dictatorship as a response and representation of what we have been experiencing. So let's give you a general idea of this game. In this game, you wake up one day in a smiley headset, as you can see on the screen, and yourself in an unknown community called Hope. So everyone here wears the same outfit. They live the same repetitive routine, and is surrounded by the same massive propagandas, and they are happy. The only beam of natural light shines through the massive overhead opening. Although there are routine classes and odd assessments, everyone lives a content and carefree life. For many, hope is their entire universe, and they are uninterested in the outside world. So to your surprise, you are informed you are a resident of hope, a harmonious society filled with laughter. So to find out how you got here, you have to dodge the governors, avoid suspicious people, to establish connections with your neighbors, and solve puzzles to collect intelligence. So in our game, the player as a protagonist must make a series of decisions. Each will affect the protagonist and their neighbor's fate. So those dilemmas and decisions may prompt their players to consider critical questions such as, what is the value of one's integrity? Is sacrificing others acceptable in some situations? What are we actually pursuing? Are you leaving or staying? Are you willing to sacrifice for truth? Or are you choosing a life of oblivion? Our team actually doesn't have an answer for those questions either, but they are crucial to consider. So there are actually multiple endings in this game, but there is no winner or loser, but only whether you are satisfied with the ending you come across. In the whole journey, I would say the biggest conflict you face seems to be the authority in the game. But indeed, actually, you will have to reflect and doubt yourself over and over again when it comes to some difficult decision making, as I mentioned before. So I would say some of the conflicts may come from yourself. While someone may seek excitement or entertainment in the game, we are drawn into this medium's seriousness. How each interaction and exploration can lead you to a thoughtful experience relating to the real world.
So in reality, a totalitarian government creates slogans, propagandas, ideologies, so as like the society in our game. The government doesn't really care whether people are truly believing these ideology or not. It just lies and rules are the ways of the regime to interrupt people's sense of self and critical thinking, to hinder their sense of self and critical thinking for absolute obedience, so as to maintain a stability of authority. From time to time, people are getting used to living under such circumstances flooded with lies. Meanwhile, we found that like game developers also construct a world with rules and ideologies. Like while we were recalling our memories of games we have played, we observed that there is a systematic pattern on the narrative design. Like the player performs or acts as the protagonist who has a mission, like either most likely finding something, like either it's like a lost memory, a person, an inner self, secret or an object. And during this journey of searching, they will inevitably encounter some kind of limitation or some kind of conflicts. Just like, let's say, even in Animal Crossing, you can also experience a financial struggle of building a house. So at this level, it seems that somehow like the structure is somehow the same as like what a totalitarian regime is doing. However, the regime is creating limitation and conflicts to control like the people and blunt their mind, while game developers are leading players to break these limitations and resolving conflicts in the game, which ultimately and hopefully trigger the reflection, ponder, and the creativity to break limitation in real life as well. So I remember that I read an article analyzing the frontline Hong Kong protesters in 2019, stating that the skills and knowledge of them to develop like strategies of doing roadblocks, like escape from and also against the police, may come from the strategic video games, just like the war games. This was quite interesting like insight that the knowledge we learned from like a game can actually imply in real life, which we didn't even expect. In fact, elements of games and art, like, or generally speaking, creativity exists no matter in the street protest or in the increasing oppression post-social movement. So it helps us to transmit like the rebellion ideas in between the gray area as well. A creation of art and game is a place where we can exercise power and allows people to access the power. And the game isn't just leading the players to rebellion through limitation, but it also doing the same to game developers. Just like we put the struggles and moral values into our game, we are also questioning to ourselves as well. So both the player and the team are learning and growing through like the game together. Like in other words, a development of a game could be claimed as a form of resistance as well, so as enjoying the game as well.
Right. So there's one thing, it may sound a bit cliche, but another way to resist power is to avoid domination and create alternatives. That's what we believe. So this is also how a notion of indie games has started. So Vaclav Havel mentioned that an idea of parallel structure, so indicating that there should be an alternative bottom-up structure other than the one created by the authority. So this structure will keep growing by itself and become mature with more autonomy from time to time, and eventually resist the dominated voices and perspectives. The other thing that might also sound cliche, but we think is very important, that is the game and art are the vectors of culture, since the product of the game and art, the product of game and art are fabricated under cultural context that could reflect certain part of the circumstances of that generation. We always know, we can always know more about the culture and history by studying the cultural products of the corresponding generation. For example, another Hong Kong game developer, he has created a never-ending VR game that is about a scene in the Hong Kong protest in 2019. The player has to avoid being hit by the tear gas bomb, and they have to attack the police by throwing the bricks towards them. So this game has been hindered to release on Steam due to the suspected political reason. This game was definitely one of the significant items remarking the situation in Hong Kong at that time. We also read a very interesting comment about our game on the internet. It says that the typical narrative in the 80s and 90s was often the a rag to riches story of someone pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. This is the central ethos of Hong Kong's Lion Rock spirit. That's what we call this kind of spirit. And in 2020, however, the desire of hope and freedom has become the most salient theme in Hong Kong production for its generation.
So probably a conclusion is, why did we choose game as a medium to resist power? And I think honestly speaking, we have no other ways to to do. Like there is nothing left, almost nothing left. We have too much risk to do other things. And being as an artist and being as a cultural worker, we want to use our like knowledge to like resist or to transmit the idea. So also we are refused to be overwhelmed by the helplessness, like the fear and the loss under the oppression. So we want to uphold the truth that we believe, and we want to share it with other people. We understand that we have the privilege to speak more explicitly just because we are in overseas, not in Hong Kong. Like we have less risks to be like either arrested or have other like safety reason not to speak. So we choose to speak out. And being as an artist, a game lover, and a Hong Konger, games are our tool to rebel and to transmit ideas. Like, although we mentioned that like game and art is not that efficient approach to resist power, but it might be more powerful than we expect just because we are creating this game. So we wish to believe in that. But most importantly, because we believe that ideas are bulletproof. Yeah. So
I think this is about our sharing. So thank you very much.
and if you have any questions, just feel free to pop up on the YouTube comment. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Is there anything you want to know a little bit more or Thank you.
Actually, there's one thing that we didn't mention. As long as, I mean, as our game developing process goes through, many of our friends just ask if we fear to go back to Hong Kong. And then not only one of our friends, but more than like 3 or 4 of our friends did ask us the same question. And then we were quite actually, for me, I'm quite actually surprised by how they react to my situation. I feel like they feel the fear more than I do. And maybe because I'm not that sensitive, but I believe, yeah, I always believe that what we should fear is the fear itself. That's what I'm upholding. So that's why I don't think I should hold that fear that much. So do you have any thought about that?
Yeah, I also saw there is a question similar to what you have said before. And for me, just like, because I know, like knowing that there are other peers, like not only artists, but game developers or maybe students, they're creating like works about the protests and the form that they are like used to or they are familiar with. I think it's just being as a citizen and really cares about the fellows the protest has been like advocating it. The responsibility carries more than the fear itself. And well, also I'm saying this because I'm also acknowledging my own privilege of like being in overseas. And somehow I also feel a little bit like regretful of not like staying in my homeland and staying with my friends and family to like to actually like to have a testimony of the whole protest. But at the same time, having this kind of privilege makes me have more freedom, time, and resources to really speak out. So yeah, just why not? How do you manage the emotional weight of working on something political and personal? Do you get close to burning out? This is interesting.
Maybe you can respond.
I can take it a little bit more personal. Like I had the time of burning out in 2019 when the protest was really intense. and the conflicts happens every day, I always ask myself, like being in New York, I always ask myself, should I went back to Hong Kong? Should I document, or what, even just like what should I do? But I don't know, just it was hard for me to like get over the mental struggle. And I was glad that I could make it, because I had my peers and I had my professors also. I saw, oh, actually, like seeing a lot of people from other countries who are also experiencing similar like protests or like social like conflicts. They're actually doing something. So it makes me wanting to do more than to keep into the status of like holding myself. And yeah, so
Maybe we can go through the traditional conception of games is that they are something you can lose. Does that tie into the design of the game? Well, I think I'm not sure whether I get the question correctly, but I think what we designed in this game is that there's no win or lose in the game, and there are, as I said, there are multiple endings. So every decision making that you make in the game will drive you to certain ending. So that's only whether you are fine with the ending you get. And then if you consider the ending you desired you're getting, then you may consider it winning the game. If not, otherwise you can consider you just lose. And then I'm not sure whether I was fully answering the question, so I hope that I did.
So another question is this the parallel between ground up and game development and resistant movement? I think this idea originates when I'm only speaking to myself, but this originates when I am an artist and when I was doing like more of my video work and performance. It's just being in the art circle and also like playing games and getting in touch with indie games. It was more like an ideal circle or conversation that I always wish to have. And seeing that, like observing the Hong Kong protests, they are having the model of like, they don't have the big leader, everyone takes their part. It also resonates to how my practice or how my ideal circle is. So is there any other question? What sort of support would you like to see from fellow artists and developers in the broader industry?
That's interesting.
I will say it in a little bit more, how should I say, like a conceptual way, is through the game, we want to share the experience to people around like different culture, but we also know that you have like everyone has their own like specific personal experience and they have their own like cultural significance. Like everyone is different and every culture is different, even though we want to share it, but there is some like something that people each other couldn't really grasp onto. And what I wish from maybe artists or game developers or maybe like players to get is, I wish them to really research on what is happening in Hong Kong after they played our game, and also acknowledge that they might not be fully understanding, given that they might not from like the culture of Hong Kong, but at the same time they can apply some of the idea or some of the, if they have some inspiration, apply some of the inspiration onto their life. Let's say if they have something that they need to rebel, or if they have something that they can make a choice, then how would they choose? This will be the biggest support for us if we can achieve.
Yes, because we actually paid a lot of effort balancing the specificity of the narrative. So how specific we should address to the political issue we care about, or how to like make it wider to make it more engaging. Because I think that's something we Mandy may share, the prototype previous version of this game made by Mandy, that was pretty specific to Hong Kong issue. So that was a little game that she made during her master degree. And then it turns out, I think some of the response was quite supportive, even though they are from different culture. They also understand the vibe and the conflict brought by the narrative in the game. So, but still, we want to test it out how specific we should make in the game we are creating, Name of the World. So that's what we are learning.
I think the time is almost up.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
like participating in the talk, and I hope you can enjoy it like you had enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.